Hi y'all, and welcome to my booktube channel. I decided to start this because I thought it could be a bit of fun and a good way to talk about books in a bit more of a longer form than I do on TikTok or than what I post on Insta. So I thought I would take the time for this first video to just introduce myself and kind of talk a bit about my favorite books that I have read ever and kind of what got me on my reading journey and how I like to read and kind of the genres I prefer. So first up, I am Jess. It is lovely to meet you all. I am from New Zealand and in my early 30s. I have been obsessively reading since I was a small child. I have always had my nose in a book. Some of the biggest books I remember from my childhood, like once we hit high school years, will be Melina Machetta's books. So Looking for Alibrandi and On the Jellicoe Road. I remember these as being quite important to me when I read them when I was like 15, 16 years old, and absolutely loved them. She is an Australian author, which is very highly rate. Another book that has definitely deeply influenced me through my life is Pride and Prejudice. I have multiple copies of that book. It's the only book I own multiple copies of. And I have always been obsessed with it. I also love the BBC version of the adaptation, the one that's like 9 hours long, and usually rewatch that once a year. But I have always loved Pride and Prejudice. It's my favourite out of all the classics. I was never a Shakespeare girl. I was never really a Bronte girly or anything like that. I loved Pride and Prejudice. I definitely resonated with I've resonated with Elizabeth Bennet and her sassiness and her standing up as a strong moral woman, which I think is great. Strong female characters. She was one of like the best that I first read, and I just love the format. I do need to read more Jane Austen because I haven't read much of her other books, but Pride and Prejudice is always a go-to golden oldie for me and will never fail. But nowadays I read a lot of contemporary romance, so I primarily only read romance novels. I will read the odd biography or non-fiction book, but for the most part it is the romance genre. And of that, I particularly adore small town, cowboy, and hockey romances. I also don't mind an NFL romance or a rugby romance if I can find them, but rugby romances are definitely harder to find. But being from New Zealand, we are a rugby country, so those will be read as well. But yeah, no, small town cowboy is my go-to, along with hockey romances. I absolutely adore. I've been reading them for a very long time. The first hockey romance I ever read was Tonya Leo's, and I have read every book she's ever published since then, which was about 12 years ago. So she is like my must recommend. If you are a hockey romance girl, you need to be reading Tonya Leo's. I also adore Emily Rath, and a whole bunch of small town cowboy romance authors. I will admit, most of what I read is on my Kindle. So coming from New Zealand, it is very hard to get indie author hard copies. By that, I mean physical books. We are restricted in what is available to us in the market just because. And if you're wanting to buy indie books, sometimes they can be $40, $50 to get them. And you can only get them on Amazon from the States. So they can be very expensive. So the Kindle has allowed me to read pretty much the world in a very easy way. I have just finished Through the Dust. Fabulous. Small town cowboy romance. Absolutely great. So looking at this year, so far I've read 86 books. I have a Goodreads and a Fable that I record them on because I love to see kind of what books I've read, what authors I enjoy, and it's a good way to keep track. I also have a reading journal that I record everything in and have some reading challenges in. So I thought another nice thing to add to this video would be books of the month for this year so far, because they're the ones that have really stuck with me. And I've really thought, in saying that, some of these books, there are other books that month that have absolutely sucked me in. But my top 5 books of this year have been Bourbon and Lies, or all of the Bourbon Brothers, to be honest, from Victoria Wilder. That small town, morally-ish grey, not cowboys. They're very clear they're not cowboys. Has been an obsession of mine. I'm very disappointed to see the series end, but it was fabulous. So 5 stars for all of them. Hook, Line and Single, which is by Phoebe McLeod. That is a closed-door romance set on a cruise ship, on a singles cruise, which made me actually want to go get on a boat. In March, we had a non-fiction book, which I adored, which was Sam the Trap Man. He is from New Zealand. He is a conservationist and does like hunting and trapping in New Zealand. We're used to, and now does a lot more conservation work. So that was something I find interesting. I also absolutely adored Between the Pines by Amber Palmer, which is book 1 of the Black Springs Ranch series. Book 2 is what I've just finished. And then for May was Wolf by Paisley Hope, which is a very morally grey motorbike club romance, which was delicious. And then this month, so far, my favourite book has been, so hard to pick, but I think it would have to be a toss-up between Through the Dust and Bourbon and Proof, which is the final Bourbon Voice series, and Spurred On, which is a cowboy romance. He is a bull rider. She is a nurse. They accidentally get married in a drunken night in Vegas, and it is forced proximity from there, and they're forced to stay married for a while, and that is by Ali Jordan. So they are kind of the books I've been reading this year so far in like the highlight reel. I will say I also do listen to audiobooks, but I predominantly only listen to nonfiction audiobooks. I don't particularly enjoy listening to fiction audiobooks because I prefer to have the voice of the character in my head and how I imagine they sound, which I know is unique. But yeah, so there's a bit of a background on my reading, on the sort of books I enjoy, what is likely to be discussed on this channel, which is your romance novels, and kind of how I got into reading, how I read, and yeah, just a bit of that. So if you're interested, follow, like and subscribe. I believe those are the words that the kiddies use. And I will look to post probably once a week, maybe twice a week, depending of different things, be it my TBR for the month, reviewing the books that I have read over the previous month. I do want to do a yes, no, maybe of every book I've read this year, because I think this a longer form video would be perfect for that, because I've read so many books so far. And yeah, any other ideas? I do want to do also a cowboy series, my highly recommended cowboy series. But any ideas, pop them in the comments, because I would greatly appreciate that. And yeah, follow along and let's see where this goes.